Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you how to tie tzitzit with Tekhelet according to what is commonly called the Breslov Method, but is actually the method designed by an Israeli rabbi named Shalom Arush, who is Breslov. I am not Breslov, nor am I Hasidic, but I think that this is the best method out there currently for tying tzitzit with Tekhelet. So this is what it looks like, the finished product. And what's really cool about this method is that it's a synthesis method that combines a lot of the best parts of other methods for tying with Tekhelet. One of the first things you might see is that there are 7 Tekhelet huliot, and that follows the Rambam's view that there should be 7 to 13 huliot made entirely of blue, except for the first and last wines, which in this case we don't have to worry about because we have the first and last wines of white up here. And if you're like me and you think that the Talmud's instructions to begin and end with white actually refer to the first hulia, then you have that as well. The first and last hulia are 3 white wines. And then each section starts and ends with white, just as the Talmud instructs. The Talmud says to begin and end with white so that we always increase in holiness. That only applies to the entire tied portion, so you could just start and end with white here. But to really reinforce that lesson, this method, each section starts and ends with white, which is very nice. And then one of the other cool things about this method is that it uses the 7 to 13 huliot of 3 wines with the 7, 8, 11, 13 way of tying tzitzit that most of us are used to with all white tzitzit. So most of us tie with a first set of 7 windings, then 8, then 11, then 13. I know some people use 10, 5, 6, 5 as well. And this method allows us to tie with 7, 8, 11, 13 while using the huliot of 3 wines. It also, in my opinion, is one of the most beautiful ways of tying tzitzit. I think it looks really, really nice. You also have the 5 double knots required by many rabbis over the years. This adds significance because the word tzitzit adds up to 600, plus the 8 strings and the 5 double knots makes 613, and this reminds us of the 613 mitzvot. So it's a very, very cool method that combines a lot of different ways of tying tzitzit. I'm going to be tying it with a ravad string of Tekhelet. There are 3 types of Tekhelet strings that you can buy. You can buy Tekhelet strings according to the Rambam, which is 1/2 string of Tekhelet, one of the 4. You can buy them according to Tosafot, in which you'll get 2 full strings of Tekhelet, or you can buy according to the Ravad, which case you have 1 string of Tekhelet, which actually leads to 2 because you take them and you insert them through this hole, and then the string gets split in half, which is why the Rambam only uses 1/2 string. The Rambam string ratio probably would look the best with this because there wouldn't be any of the blue that you see sort of in between the huliot, in between the windings, but it's not the strings that I have or that I use, so I'm going to be tying with the Ravad. However, you can tie them with any string combination. It all works the same, it all ends up the same. As long as you have some white and some Tekhelet, you're good to go. Really quickly, I also want to point out that there is another method that many people like that is basically the same as this, except all of the windings alternate between white and blue. As you can see in this method, you have some blue put together. This follows the Amram Gaon's view that the huliot should alternate between white and blue. I don't believe this is necessary. The Talmud does not specify that the huliot should alternate between white and blue. However, that is another option if you like. It's the same thing, except you just alternate between white and blue. And you would treat, in that case, these windings where you have 1 and then another 2 over here, and that happens again down here, as 1 hulia. So you would make both of these blue or both of these white, and same with this one up here. And I can put an image of what that alternate tying method looks like on the screen. So first I'm going to actually show you how to untie one of these knots. It's helpful if your nails are a little bit longer for this. I wouldn't recommend doing this right after you've freshly trimmed your nails. But You will almost certainly have to undo one of these knots at some point, either to untie your tzitzit that you're wearing currently, or because you make a mistake, which will probably happen. So I will show you how to do that first while I'm here. So the way you untie one of these knots, these are the Yemeni knots that people use. Most people tie, according to the Rambam, using this knots. This method can be tied with other types of knots, but this is the way most people use it. It's the way Rabbi Arush ties his tzitzit. The way you undo these knots is you take this top wind right here and you pull. And when you pull, you can pull through, and then if you pulled this string all the way through, you can see it's starting to give, pull it through, and then it just unwinds itself. And you're all set. And then for these double knots, to untie those, very easy. You just pull them apart. Like so. All right, now to begin, you're going to take your 3 white strings, or however many white strings you are using. If you're using the Tosafot string ratio, you'd only have 2 white strings. And if you're using the Rambam ratio, you would take the 3 completely white strings, and then the other half of the white string, the string that's half white, half Tekhelet, you'd take the white half and align it here. What you want to do is align all of the tips of the white strings together before you put them through the hole, so that way when you get through, it's a little bit easier to decide at what length you want to tie them, because you want the 2 sides to be roughly equal. If that's not clear, you'll see what I mean. So before you start, you want to say L'Shem Mitzvah Tzitzit, to declare your intention that what you're doing is for the mitzvah of tzitzits. So L'Shem Mitzvah Tzitzit. And you just stick them all through the hole. It can take a little bit of patience. Usually it's not too hard. If you need to, you can use some sort of pin to push them through. And then once you've done that with the white strings, you take your Tekhelet string and you do the exact same thing. L'Shem Mitzvah Tzitzit. And you pull it through. All right, now once you've got all of your strings through, you're going to want to make sure that when you pull them sort of at the end, down here, that they end at roughly the same spot, except for your 2 shomashim. You're also, if you're reusing strings like I am, you're going to want to measure ahead of time to make sure that the blue string isn't wildly short on one end or wildly long on the other. So for me, I know that for my strings, I need to leave the blue on the non-shomash side a couple inches, maybe 2 inches or so, shorter than the other strings. And that way it'll look more even when I'm done. So from there, you take your strings, you take the 4 in one hand and the 4 in the other hand, and you take one of those 4, go under, and then through the loop that you created. And you want to press it so that it's the 4 winds are very sort of neat like that. Don't worry about getting them too tight for now, but you want them to be somewhat tight because you can tighten it against the other knot that we're about to make. And you want this part of your talit to be crumpled up. And you should be making this knot on the side of your talit, though that's easy to fix. You can usually pull it through if you do it on the wrong side. So don't worry too much about that, but ideally it's on the side of your talit. And you want, as I said, this to be crumpled up a little bit. Then you do the exact same knot, but because you've tied it this way, the strings are now in the opposite hand. So you do the exact same thing with the other 4 strings. And when you do it, the 2 knots should touch and look like this. This is exactly what you're going for, and you tighten these by pulling here so that they push together. Tighten the bottom ones, and then what you're looking for in particular is you want on this knot for all 4 of the strings to be in a nice little row like that, with the 2 knots pressed up against each other. You're going to want to also make sure that the ends of the strings are roughly equal in length. So this is good enough for me, and it's kind of difficult to see on the camera because you want to stretch them out a little bit, but not too much, to see exactly where they end up. But if they don't end up in the same place, if one side is noticeably shorter than the other, it's very easy. You just undo this knot and redo it. You'll be right back where you need to be. We're also now going to take the opportunity to take the non-shomash end. This is the side without the 2 shomashim, unlike this end where the white and blue strings run long. You're going to take it and just tie a knot. A lot of people like to do a slip knot. I find it easiest to just make any sort of knot, just so that we know that these are the 4 strings that we used on the one side, so that when we come back to make more of these double knots, which we're going to have to do repeatedly, we know which 4 strings go together and the other 4 strings. All right, so now we're at the trickiest part, which is making the Yemeni knots. And it's going to be even trickier because I have a camera in my way. So what you're going to want to do, we're always going to start with the white string, is first find the shomash by just taking the end and pulling on it, and then finding which string it is up here. Take it and separate it from the others, and bring the others down like this. You want the shomash to be on the right side. If it isn't, you just flip the talit over. And it's helpful often to put the weight of the talit on top of it so that it holds it in place a little bit more. I'm not going to do that right now, but that I have found is helpful. Making these knots is easy once you get the hang of it, but it's not intuitive and it's kind of difficult to get the hang of it. So trust that you will understand better and expect that your first knot will probably not be any good, but it's very easy to untie and start again. So don't worry about it too much. Take the strings, take this one, the shomash, which is the string that you're using to wrap around the others. Hold them all tight. You're going to want to take it under your finger, up like this. So you're creating a sort of triangle shape, if you will, and then pull through that triangle. So you can see we now have a little loop around, and you're going to do that 3 times. So that's once, here is the second time, and then now the 3rd time. And don't worry too much about these winds up here. They're not actually important. You're just doing it so that you have some string to wrap around the end. You need to do these winds up here, what I just did, the number of times that you want the finishing hulia to have. So for example, on this hulia right here, where you have only 2 winds, you only would do that twice instead of 3 times like I just did, because you're only going to go back again through it twice. And I'll show you that when I get to the single wind at the end of this hulia. So you now take that string and lay it down with the others, the shomash, this end that you pulled through, the sort of loose end. Take it, lay it down with the other strings. Now you take this triangle part, hold the other strings really tight, and you take it and you wrap it around the other strings. And you do this the number of times you want winds. So with this one, we want 3. So we're doing it once, twice. You want to get it sort of on the right groove. And 3 times. You want this to be as tight as humanly possible. It should kind of hurt your other finger that you're using your nail bed to hold it down. And then you pull through with the loose end of that string, and it collapses into one of these knots. These knots are very cool because they are exactly 3 winds. So you can see on the end where we tied it, if I can get my camera to focus, that right where the one wind starts to go over, the other wind comes back. So you get a wind of exactly 3. I'm now going to attempt it again with the blue shomash, a little bit quicker, hopefully, and a little bit closer up. Hopefully this is sort sort of a different angle if you're still not seeing it. So you pull through, you get that little triangle, you do it twice, and a third time. You take those 3 windings, push them up, so you can see, take the string, put it in with the other ones, grab the loose bit, and go once, twice, 3 times. When you get to here, take the loose part of the string and just pull. Oh, it's this one. Take the loose part of the string right here and just pull. It should tighten into a knot. Now the spacing on this is actually pretty good. The spacing is another component and you'll just have to do trial and error. If you don't like this knot, it's very easy to undo. As I said, you just take that part there, sort of pull it up, and the knot will come undone very easily. So there you go. We now have 2 huliot. Now we just need to make the final one. So this final one is going to be made of white. So we're going to take our white shomash again. And with this one, we just want 1 wind because the first section we want to have 7 winds total. So you take it and you do everything that you just did. But you want the blue shamash out of the way, ideally. Create that little triangle. Pull through. And then take the string, lay it down. Wind once around itself as tight as possible. And then pull through to tighten. And there you have this single wind. This single wind, I recommend, in my experience, making it a little bit lower than the spacing you want between these two, because when we tie the double knot, it's going to get pushed up slightly. So as you can see, for me, it's basically where it is. This one is the trickiest winding to tie, in my opinion, these single ones, but they're also the easiest to undo and redo. So expect trial and error with this one. It took me a lot of trial and error to get the hang of it, but once you get the hang of it, it'll be great, and it's not that easy to undo. Or it's very easy to undo, rather. So now you take your two sets of 4 strings, 4 over here and 4 over here. You can see we know which 4 to use because we have that knot from earlier. And we're going to do the same double knots. So you take, make a loop like that. Pull up to tighten. You can see we have those 4 winds right next to each other, which is exactly what we want. And now, this side, which was in the left before, is naturally in the right hand, and you just do the exact same thing. Pulling these 4 through, like this, and then tightening. If you get it all bunched up, like I did here, oftentimes if you just pull, it sort of sorts itself out. Sorry, I know it's blurry. But you can also pull on each string individually and kind of just use your fingers to try and finagle them until they're all into place. So if like this string on the right needs to be a little tighter, you just find which one that is and just pull it, and it'll pull a little tight. You want these double knots to be really, really tight because these will actually untie themselves a lot easier than these windings. So worry in some ways more about the tightness of these double knots than of these windings. And there you have it. So that's the first hulia, as you can see. Unfortunately, the white wind did get pushed up a fair amount because of this double knot, just as I said. So I would probably actually go back and retie it. There is a little bit of wiggle in these knots, but not a ton. So yeah, the final product, as you can see over here, should look like this. Very simply. 7 winds, 8 winds, 11 winds, 13 winds. So you're going to do a hulia of 3 white, followed by a hulia of 3 blue, followed by a single white wind, that double knot, Hulia of 2, Hulia of 3, Hulia of 3, double knot, Hulia of 3, Hulia of 2, Hulia of 3, Hulia of 3, 2, and then a single one to complete that 3. It's kind of like, imagine one Hulia separated by these double knots, and then your final 3 Tekhelet and final white wind, or white Hulia. And there you have it. And then at the end, ideally, the untied portion that hangs loose is double the length of this tied portion. So you want a ratio of 1/3 tied to 2/3 loose. So you can see here, I have that roughly with the white string. If I take the white string and I pull it up and then I sort of pull it back, you can see that it's roughly double the length because I can do it twice. With the blue strings, for me, my Tekhelet strings are a little bit short, so I have more like just half. But as long as it goes beyond the tied portion, you're good and it'll look fine. Ideally, the longer the strings, sort of the better, so that you have that 1/3 ratio. You can also, if your strings are really too long at the end, you can cut them. Many people like to not cut them with metal, so you can cut them with glass, you can bite them, you can cut them with other materials, but I like to just sort of leave them like this. And there you have it. So that's how you do the Breslov or Shalom Arush Tzitzit with Tekhelet. I'm not going to show you me winding each Hulia like I have in some of the previous videos because, frankly, it's difficult, especially with the camera in the way. But be patient with these knots. Once you get the hang of it, it's super satisfying. They look amazing when they're done correctly. And don't be afraid if you tie one and it doesn't look right to just untie it. And do your best to tie really tight. That will save you string length, first and foremost, but it'll also just make it look nicer and a little bit more rigid. You can also get a situation where the final winding right here sort of peels off. That's usually caused by one of two problems. Either you didn't wind tight enough, or you didn't have the string sort of on the right side, which naturally puts the disjointed part of the knot where you want it to be, and so it came off and it's loose over here. I'll probably go tie one of those knots in a minute, but basically just undo it and fix it, and do it as many times as you need till it looks right. There you have it. Hopefully this is helpful to you. I think this is the best way to tie it. If you're still struggling with the Yemeni huliot, these Yemeni knots, there are actually a lot of videos on YouTube that show how to do it. So good luck to you. Good luck with this mitzvah. If you're fulfilling the mitzvah of Tekhelet for the first time, Chazak u'Baruch, good for you. And I hope you found this helpful. All right, thank you for watching.